Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and I'm gonna try something. We'll see whether or not it works out, and if it works out and folks like it, maybe I'll make a series of it. But I thought today what I would try to do is make a recipe card. I'm putting that in quotes because it's not a recipe for to cook, but more like a recipe for card making. I remember I did a couple years ago a little bit of an event for cat scrappiness where we had I think it was kind of like a challenge where folks could join in on a recipe, and I think I'm going to try rolling with that. And so this recipe is going to be different to what was chosen for that one. And as I mentioned, if it works out and it's a fun idea, then I'll have additional new recipes to share. So I will first set all of this aside and talk a little bit about the concept of this. So my thinking is this, that I would share a recipe for making a particular type of card. And so this recipe starts off with some gorgeous pattern papers. So you can pick, I would say it depends on the number of cards that you want to make, because what we're going to do is use various different pattern papers, or I should say a combination of pattern papers, and make possibly a set of cards. So I would say 2 to 4 different pattern papers, and however many it is you end up choosing, that's how many cards you will have at the end of this. This is not a no scrap make, so you will have some scraps left over and you can make additional projects from those. So pattern paper, 2 to 4 sheets. Next, you'll want something for your focal images. So this particular paper pad by Not Too Shabby has one of the sheets is a cut apart. So I already sent it through my brother's scan and cut. Each unique design in Cozy Neutrals has 4 sheets, and so I cut 2 of these. That way we have plenty to craft with, way more than 2 to 4 cards worth here. So whatever you want to choose for your focal images, you'll want to prepare that. Maybe it's stamping and coloring some images, maybe it's other ephemera packs that you have on hand, because the whole idea is, yes, you can buy this amazing Paper Pad Club set if you would like, but you can also equally use these recipe cards to craft from your stash. So we've got our focal images. I would also recommend a place to get some sentiments from. This is Mini Messages. It's really great. I figure whatever card I want to make, I can get my sentiments from here. And what I like best about it is the size, because it's very it's gonna be there, but it doesn't have to be like the main focal image, so that you can really focus on the main image here as the star of your card. So something where you can get your sentiments. And then I am going to use my Easy Wonder dies, but you don't have to necessarily use these. I specifically will probably use the add-ons, because the next ingredient that you need for these cards will be any shape dies. And why I like the Easy Wonder add-on die sets is because each one comes with a variety of different shapes, and so it's a really great die set for your basic shapes. So whatever you'd like to use, whether it's a nested shape set or if you have the Easy Wonder add-on sets, then you can pull those out, and there's going to be something in here that you can use for the card we're going to make. Besides these, we're going to need our card bases and some coordinating solid color cardstock. You might need some additional things for embellishments like glitter enamel dots and or Love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers. I know that's one of my favorites. So those extra little goodies are the final touches that we'll add to our card. So that's all of the ingredients. Now let's start with some prep work. I've picked out 3 different pattern papers from the Cozy Neutrals paper pad. And how I arrived at these 3 is I was looking for some contrast, some variation among them. So if you look at this one, you can see it's pretty different from the other 2 because there's a lot of white in the background, whereas these are fairly solid, so to speak. This one is more of, I wouldn't say a solid color, but it definitely has less of a pattern to it than this one, which is very soft florals. So the patterning in terms of just the scale is much larger. If you look at each of these sort of paint swipes as a graphic, so to speak, it's a lot larger in scale than these little flowers, which are a lot more dainty. So while both of these sort of feel more full in terms of how much color is on the sheet, it's different and they contrast with one another quite a lot. And so between all 3, there's really good contrast, and that way when we use them together, they don't all just blend and meld into one pattern. So what I'm gonna do for our prep work is to cut all 3. If you can cut all 3 at the same time, I would definitely recommend it, especially for some of the later cuts. So if it helps you, you can always use some temporary tape to tape them together, and that might help with the paper slipping. So for example, you can do something like this, and especially if you're only using 2, it definitely will keep the 2 together. In this case, I'm using 3, but a little bit of tape will, especially at the top and bottom, that'll help it to not slide as much. The first cut I want to make is at 4 inches. So I am basically going to cut maybe like what I would normally start off with as a panel for an A2 card. And if I were near my cinch stack cutter, I might actually do this in bulk there. But oh, you know, the other thing that would be good for this, maybe I'll use my my rotary cutter, because this is meant for thicker cuts. Okay, so the next cut, that was at 4 inches, and then this will be at 5 1/4. So just make sure it's all lined up. Okay, so we have 4 by 5 1/4, and all 3 are cut to the same. Next, what I will do is, and this is a card design that I learned at the Masculine Makes Masterclass series. It's a geometric design, my take on it, that Sarah taught. And so I thought, well, this is kind of fun. Maybe let me give it a try and we'll see what we can come up with. So here's what I'm gonna do. All 3 pattern papers are here. So I am gonna cut, if you want to, if you have 3 patterns, then I would cut this in such a way that you have 3 pieces. That way we can mix and match them into different combinations and create 3 cards from it. So if you chose only 2 pattern papers, then I would cut so that you have 2 pieces, and then you can mix and match them and create different cards. Similarly, if you chose 4, then I would cut it in such a way that you have 4 different pieces. And where you cut this is totally up to you. So one of the things that I want to try to achieve with these recipe cards is that this is like cooking and less like baking. So it's not an exact science. So you don't have to necessarily follow these specific measurements or instructions. You just do it to taste, you know? So and that's what I hear a lot about with cooking, that, you know, it's more of a personalized way of making your meals, and that way you can make everything to taste. So if you don't like particular ingredients, then you can swap it out. If you don't like your food quite as salty or quite as sweet, then you can change it. A lot of times with baking, there's a little bit of a science to it, and so you kind of have to follow the recipe exactly, or else you might not get exactly the same textures or the same rise when the dessert or whatever breads are baked. And so these recipe cards are more meant to be like cooking, so make them however you'd like. Now I've got 3 sheets here, so I'm gonna make 2 cuts in order to get 3 pieces from each sheet. And so I will do that by just cutting some irregular shapes here. So I'm gonna start off by making a triangle. I've lined up one corner here, and then I'm just randomly gonna slice through. I did choose papers that are not directional, which does make this a little bit easier. So I would recommend that, and at least to start, so that you can get the feel for it. But if you're using something directional, I would just make sure that you orient this the way that you want. So I've made my first cut, so that's my first piece. I'm gonna retape this just to help hold it all together. And then now I wanna make my second cut. So my second cut, maybe I can slice through wherever. Maybe I want another little triangle here. Maybe I want something a little bit weird, 2 different sort of trapezoidy kind of pieces. It's whatever you'd like. So I think I'm gonna aim for, maybe I do want to make an extra little triangle here. And you can make it whatever angle you'd like. The whole idea is that you can follow this recipe multiple times, but every time it can be a little bit different. And so I'm gonna just line up another triangle or another corner right here, and then I'm gonna cut another triangle. So there we go. Now I've got all of my pieces, and then we'll just take the temporary tape off here. So now that you have all of your pieces, you can start to mix and match them. And I'll show you what I mean. You want to have each piece only appear once for each card, because we chose 3 papers, we're going to end up making 3 cards. So let's say if I start with this, then I'll take 1 of this pattern and 1 of that pattern. So that's what I'll have on my first card. The next one, maybe I'll take that, this, and then that. So that's going to be number 2. Okay, and then we have our final one, which will be the last combination. So now we have 3 combinations of the 3 patterns. And so you can see this mosaic design, this very geometric design, start to evolve. And so at this point, we can just kind of set those aside as we prepare more pieces for our final assembly. Okay, so the next bit of prep that we need to do is to die cut some shapes, and they can be different shapes, they can be the same, whatever you'd like. I actually have some leftover Easy Wonder die cut shapes, so I think the craft color cardstock looks great. This tannish brown looks like it could work as well, so I've got some shapes to use. This is what we'll use as a foundation layer for our focal image and sentiment. And speaking of sentiments, I've also prepared that as well. So from mini messages, I picked out a few that I thought would be great. And whether you're using the sentiment banner that comes as part of the Easy Wonder add-on sets, or maybe you're using, this is from the Clear Stamp and Die subscription, and you could stamp and use the coordinating die to cut out. So I've got a few to choose from here, more than what I need for the 3, but that gives us options. So if you are looking to not have too many scraps left over, then just die cut 3 shapes and stamp or die cut out 3 sentiments for the 3 cards that we'll be making. And so now that all the prep work is done, we can start to mix things up and get cooking and make our cards. Okay, so I'm gonna speed up the entire process of assembling the cards, but I do show all 3 cards, how they come together, and I try to share some different techniques for how to create some very similar looks, but using different materials, using different techniques, and that way you can kind of have a little bit of variety if you're choosing to play along with this recipe card, and if you use this recipe to make some cards yourself. I would love to see what you've made if you do choose to follow along with this recipe. I'm going to put most of this to some music, but I'll come back at the end and share some of my concluding thoughts, and maybe just do a recap of what I used and my thoughts on the process. So sit back and enjoy watching these 3 cards come together. had a lot of fun with this recipe card idea. Let me know what you think of it in the description box below. But here's a final look at the 3 cards that I made. So I wanted to show different ways of gluing down your pattern papers from the initial cuts that we made. This one, I used a solid color cardstock as a card base. And then when I glued down each of these pieces, I just left a little bit of a gap. So that kind of gets a little bit the look of that mosaic. And you're using essentially the card base as the grout between each of these tile pieces. On my second card, I used Love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers, and if I had planned this out a little bit and thought I had, because this collage element here, it covers up a lot. So really, I could have gotten away with smaller pieces because there's only just a couple inches here and there that is actually visible. So if you do this and you want to use your Love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers, I would definitely recommend maybe thinking out a little bit and just cutting pieces just long enough so that you are only essentially using what's going to be visible, because so much of this is blocked off. I could have saved myself, especially those longer strips that I used, could have saved myself some of those. But this collaging, I feel, turned out really nice. I had to save some of these ephemeras that my brother's Canon cut didn't do a great job with. So I actually went in and fussed to cut those cookies out from one of those, and I just decoupaged it on top so that you have this effect of, look at how many layers I have. I've got like 2-3 layers, but they're thin layers, because I'm using low profile foam, which is only about 1 millimeter thick, and I'm using 3D glue gel, which I can kind of squidge down a little bit. So I just put a little bit in the center and pressed it down a little bit. And so these layers, they're not a lot, but they're subtle, and it's just enough to give it that extra bit of dimension, but it's not super thick to where it's going to cost you extra to send. I think this will still send for the cost of a single stamp. So really love how that turned out. Love all the dimension. Lots of fun to collage this one up. So I had a blast with that one. And I did finish this one and the other one up with some enamel dots just to add a little bit of sparkle. And this last one, I wanted to show, again, something a little bit different. So here I am using a white card base. And what I did was, since it's white, I wanted to add some color as the border, so I just cut some solid color cardstock. And if you don't have Love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers, you can just cut thin little strips of that same solid color cardstock, about 1/8 of an inch or so. And then I just used that as if it was like my pinstripe stickers. And I just glued those where those diagonal cuts are to cover up the seam of where the two 3 panels butt up against each other, and it just helps to make a cleaner transition between the 2 papers and keeps it looking nice and tidy, but also gives this that mosaic look that is similar to the first 2 cards. And I only needed the 1 ephemera piece, and I like that I actually had a blue cardstock that matched the blues in this ephemera. It's a really nice way to kind of bring attention to that little spot of color there. So I really enjoyed playing along with this recipe card. If you play along and make something following this recipe, I hope you'll share it with me either in my Facebook group, which is Crafty Fun with Friends of LV Handcrafted, or if you like to share on Instagram or Facebook, you can always just tag me at LV Handcrafted so that I can see what you've made. Thanks for checking out my video today. I'm going to leave links to the Not Too Shabby subscription clubs, because that's what I crafted with today, the paper pad club, with some of one of the sentiments was actually from the stamp of the month as well. Thanks again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day.